Good morning. I am your substitute Sunday school teacher today. We are in the quarterly called Some Fundamental Doctrines, Part 1. Today, being March the 17th, we are on Lesson 3, which is creation versus evolution. Wow, what a topic. When I was in college, I had a whole semester course on this very topic, creation versus evolution. And, you know, we dug deep, but there's a lot more you can dig deep than what we studied in a quarter. So when we have just one lesson here, we can just skim the very surface of it, and the surface tells us an awful lot about what's true, and you don't have to dig too much lower than the surface to understand what's false, why it's false, and totally reject it. Our memory verse is Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, which says, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them." That's quite a simple statement, one sentence, so much great powerful truth there. When we dig into the second chapter of Genesis, we go a little deeper and find out that when God made mankind, he made the man, the male, first, took dirt, made him out of the dirt, and then came along the best part. God made the female and made her out of what? Made him out of Adam's rib. So women are not made out of dirt, men are made out of dirt, and women are made out of men. Interesting how that works out in God's plan. What is evolution? Well, our quarterly gives us a definition. To evolve means to unfold or unroll, or to open and to expand. So it starts here and it reaches out as it goes along. That's the idea. Evolution, as far as the coming into existence of all things, especially living things, is a theory. And it's important that we understand that it is the theory of evolution. When they teach evolution in school and college, it's taught as a fact. And supposedly they have all these proofs in fossil records and various computer models and things of that nature that evolution is a fact. But evolution is not a fact. It is only a theory. And a theory is an assumption based on limited information or knowledge, something not proven. So a theory is an idea of why something is. It's not proof. And we always need to keep that in our minds when we are bombarded with evolution in school, on television, and so forth. You know, public television has some very interesting programs, Nova and things of that nature. And I enjoy watching these programs because they look at all kinds of things. You know, I saw some programs the other day in the ocean, and just some of the marvelous creatures that are in the ocean. There are creatures that haven't even been discovered yet. And it's interesting how that some of these creatures live only in one particular place. And then there's another creature that has a symbiotic relationship with that creature. In other words, the two exist together, they don't exist apart. And how do you explain that by evolution? When you look at some of the creatures, I mean, they're just some of the most strange looking creatures in the ocean. how did evolution do that? Did evolution decide to play a trick and make this ugly creature? And some of them are just beautiful. I mean, all kinds of colors and things like, did evolution do that? Or did God make that particular creature? And did God make it so that this creature lives right there? And then this other little creature works with it. I saw something having to do with plants. And there's this one particular kind of plant that lives only on this certain mountain in Southeast Asia. It's found nowhere else. But there are other organisms that are dependent on that plant, and they're found nowhere else. Is that evolution? Is that purely chance? Or is that the specific work of God to make that happen? And when I watch these programs, I'm just amazed at the animal life, the plant life period that exists on planet Earth, and how different it is, and how many different kinds of life, different species of animals and birds, plants, and how they are all important. That little creature that lives on the bottom of the ocean and that other little creature that lives with it. We don't necessarily understand why that's important. Why did God make that? But in the creative mind of God, there's a reason for that. And that particular plant on that one mountain, or that one kind of bird, or that one kind of insect, God in His wisdom made each of those creatures not just to fascinate our minds, but for a purpose. And even though we may not understand what the purpose is, God had a purpose. And sometimes it's just, their part in controlling the environment. And it's interesting in plant life and animal life how that the creatures feed on each other. There's certain creatures that only eat specific insects or rodents or something like that. Nothing else. Why? Well, to help keep the population of those creatures in control. But then there's something that eats that creature. Why? To keep that creature in population control. Because we don't want it eating up all those other things because they do something. So all life is interactive. Now, we know that when the mosquito lands on us, right? We interact with the mosquito. How many enjoy mosquito bites? Anybody here enjoy? Nobody enjoy mosquito bites. So what purpose do mosquitoes have? They were created to irritate people, right? Well, it seems like it. But they actually have a purpose in creation, in nature. Part of it is the pollination of plants and like this. And the reason they take blood is they need that blood to reproduce and so forth like that. So there's a reason for everything that every creature does. Now, mankind, sometimes we look at mankind and we say, what reason do you have for being here? Some people are kind of strange and different, but God knows every human being. Can you imagine that? Of all the trillions of people that live on the world, God knows every individual person, where they are right now, what they're thinking, what they're doing. He knows that. God is wonderful. The emphasis of our lesson, evolution, came about only as a theory. Evolution has never been nor ever will be proven, and that's a true statement. A man thought it up in the 1800s. Creation, on the other hand, is recorded in the Bible. It is not a theory. It says here, nothing that leaves God out can be the truth. And that's very true. In school, when we are taught science and things like this, if it leaves God out of the equation, says there is no God, it can't possibly be the truth. Truth is that which eternally is. Creation by God has been taught since the very beginning. And he says only humans are living souls, and souls are eternal. God created humans in his likeness and his image. That was our lesson today. So, evolution and natural selection are only theories. They are not facts. We commonly think of Charles Darwin as the originator of this theory of evolution, but historically he was not the first person to come up with this idea that creatures came into being from inert material, and life came as a single cell. It evolved over time and like this. Darwin is more noted for the concept of natural selection, survivals of the species, and not so much the evolution from a single cell to the creatures that we have today. It's tragic. Darwin was the son of a Baptist minister, and he rejected God and the things of God. And his one goal in life, so to speak, was to disprove the Bible. And that's what his theory was about, was trying to disprove the Bible. So when you are taught evolution in school, keep in mind it was brought into being by people that did not want to believe in God, did not want to believe in the Bible, and had to come up with some other kind of explanation of why are we here? Have you ever really wondered that? As you live life, as you do what you do, why am I here? How did all this come into being? How did Mount Scott happen? How did, you name it. How did it happen? I scratch my head at times, and I look around and I say, Lord, I can't explain how all this happened. But one thing I do know is that it did not happen by accident. And it didn't happen with a big bang. Did not happen through countless eons of evolution. When you look at living beings, plants, animals, insects, fish, people, things like this, do we see evolution going on today? Well, the argument that they have is, evolution happens so slowly in time that you don't notice it. And the idea is that humans are evolving, and somewhere there will be some other creature evolve out of human life. But nowhere in the known world do we ever see evolution happening now. If evolution were a fact, it would be going on now. There would be observable things. There would be evidences of creatures mutating in becoming other creatures. How long have there been frogs? Well, since God created them in the beginning. But people have observed frogs for a long time. They've been around a long time. Going back to the book of Exodus, there in Egypt, you remember one of the plagues was what? The frogs. So we've been observing frogs for over 4,000 years at least. Nowhere in nature do we see any evidences of frogs evolving into something else. Where is a frog that has one feather? And then a whole genus of frogs with one feather is evolved out of that. And then another one, 2 feathers coming out of that. And I mean, just being ridiculous. Where do you see that? You do not see it. Everything you find in nature is complete as it is. And there is no halfway creature. Perhaps the most confusing creature on earth is the platypus. Has anyone ever seen a picture of a platypus? Okay. You know, where does this creature live? Anybody? Okay. Australia. A lot of weird creatures in Australia. Okay. What's so strange about the platypus? Well, first of all, forgive me if I'm incorrect, but it's a marsupial. Next, it looks kind of like, has like duck bill. Yeah. And there are several traits that it has, features that it has that looks like other creatures, amphibians and things like that. Is really an odd creature. And one might say, well, look at this. This is evolution. Well, platypuses, or maybe it's platypi, if the name is Latin. Anyway, when they have baby platypuses. They don't have baby something else. And they always have the same anatomical features. Nothing different about them. So, you know, a platypus is not, you know, something in the process of evolving into something else. It is what God made it to be. It's kind of God's joke in creation. Now, don't tell a platypus that because it might get its feelings hurt. But it's just an unusual creature. So everything is as it was created. Now, we certainly admit in what's called adaptation. Creatures living in different climates adapt to those climates. They grow thicker fur. Or if they're in a warmer climate, they grow thinner fur. Okay? And then sometimes living in a certain place with just a certain diet, it affects their metabolism. And there are just certain traits that are different from the same genus in a different place. But they are the same animals. You look at their DNA, and they are the same. So just because there is adaptation among species does not indicate anything having to do with evolution. It's just God's way of helping creatures to adapt to their environments. The same way with plants. I saw a program on plants that are carnivorous. Eat insects and things of that nature. And within the various genus of these plants, there are the same plants but have different attributes, so they adapted to their climate and their environment so that they can catch the bugs and the critters that live in that area as opposed to the ones that live in another area. Some are taller. Some have deeper, wells that trap these critters and things like that. Just, it's really fascinating. But that's only adaptation. That's not evolution. Those are not plants changing into something else. All right. John chapter 5, verses 46 and 47. For had you believed Moses, you would have believed me, for he wrote of me. But if you believe not his writings, how shall you believe my words? Okay. Jesus speaks of Moses as if Moses is, his writings are truth, are fact. Okay. Jesus, we know, is the Son of God. Jesus is divine. Jesus is the truth himself. He said, I am the way, truth, and life, okay? So if Jesus said that what Moses wrote is true, is it true? It has to be. Why? God can't lie. The Bible teaches us God can't lie. So, Moses wrote the book of Genesis. Now, I learned something when I was in college about the book of Genesis. Moses was not there in the beginning when God created the heaven and the earth. Anybody think that Moses was there? Okay. Moses was not there when God created Adam and Eve. Moses was not there during the great flood. He was not on the ark. Okay. Moses was not there when Abraham lived, or Isaac, or Jacob. All right. So how did Moses know what to write in the book of Genesis? Well, actually, the book of Genesis is several independent books that Moses already had in his possession. Okay? Chapter 1 is a book all by itself. Chapter 2 is a book by itself. And we could go on to several different, groupings of books and chapters within the book of Genesis. So where did Moses get this? Well, who was the first man? Anybody? Adam. Okay. Was Adam there in the beginning? Yes, he was. Okay. He came into being on the sixth day of creation. All right. Did Adam have language? Or did he just, Okay, he had language. Okay, what language did he have? Well, we don't know. Okay, and let's not guess. Okay, but he had language. Okay, because he said, to Eve, this bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. That's language. All right. Since Adam had language, did he have the ability to write? Okay. It's natural in human beings with language to be able to make written records. Now, all writing doesn't look like this. Okay. How many have ever seen hieroglyphics? Okay. What does hieroglyphics look like? Anybody? Pictures. Picture writing. Okay. How many have ever seen Sanskrit and writing like that? It just looks like lines and triangles and things like that. How many have ever seen Japanese or Chinese? Okay. Kind of little blocky things with little lines sticking out of them. How many have ever seen the Hindu language? Okay, it's all swirls and things like this. How many have ever seen Arabic? Okay, it's strange. They write backwards. We write forwards. They write backwards. Okay, but languages have existed ever since people. So, when there is this book of beginnings, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. Moses had that handed down to him from somewhere. It had a beginning. Was it written by Adam? I don't know. We can't know. We don't actually have the physical copy of that book. It could have been written by Adam and handed down generation to generation. Noah had a copy of it on the ark. Noah, just passed it off to his families, so on and so forth. I mean, I'm speculating. That's theory, okay? But it's reasonable theory that, we had language and people were able to write down books. Now, some cultures, while they do have written language, their history is oral. And there are certain people in the tribe or that is their only job, is they sit with an older person for the rest of that person's life. They learn the history, and then they in turn pass it on, and then the next one passes it on. That's still going on in many countries around the world, oral history. So it's strongly possible that there was a strong oral history that was passed down and at some time written down, and then Moses had these copies of these books and was able to look at them and put them into what we know as the book of Genesis. Okay? Were those other books divinely inspired? To some degree, we would have to say yes, based on theory. But what is divinely inspired is what Moses was shown to take out of those documents and to put into the book of Genesis. That is divinely inspired. So some of those other books may have correct factual information in them. But as far as divine inspiration, that was picked up when God said to Moses, put this into your book. Put this into your book. Okay? So, let's go on to 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 39. Getting into that which exists. All flesh is not the same flesh, but there is one kind of flesh of men, another flesh of beasts, another of fishes, and another of birds, as so stated in Genesis chapter 1. That's given to us very clearly, very plainly. God created each in its own environment and place. The Quarterly says, it would be the same if all came from the same beginning cells, evolving into all the forms of life. I don't really agree with that statement. I know what's being said here. It's just a little bit simplistic, and it does not allow for adaptation. So we're not going to argue with it. But what comes next? However, it would not be if each kind were made by a separate act of creation. God's word tells us here that flesh of men, flesh of beasts, flesh of fishes, and of birds are all different kinds. That's true. That is a fact. Okay? So, we did not evolve out of a single cell, becoming these different things, going different lines of evolution like this. We are created specifically what we are by God. This course that I took in creation versus evolution, the odds of one protein cell coming into existence out of inert matter. Okay, protein is the foundation of life. And you need a lot more than one protein cell. You need different kinds of protein cells. But the odds of one protein cell coming into existence is astronomical. I thought about bringing the book, but it's like 1 to the umpteenth power out there. And, you tell that to an evolutionist, and you know what? They say, right. But look, it happened. That's how they deal with it. Here you have a statistically almost impossible thing. Well, almost impossible thing. But yet that 1 zillionth, trillionth, zillionth, magnillionth of a chance, they say, and look, it happened. Okay, well, how about the next kind of protein cell? Okay, the same thing. You're talking about astronomical uh, chances of anything of like that coming into being. And first of all, where did the inert matter come from? Where did all the elements come from? Iron and, all these things. Where did they come from? Are they eternal? How could they be? Explain, Mr. Evolutionist, how that happened. Well, they have to say, well, it just is. And they criticize us for believing that God just is. Why are we the fools? Because we believe God just is. And God is so intelligent that just by speaking, He could bring into existence physical matter. Hey, light, a planet, solar system, animals, people, and all these things. But yet they believe that somehow this eternal material existed, but they can't explain where it came from. But yet, through random chance, all this happened. Doesn't happen. Genesis 1:25. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and the cattle after their kind, and every thing that creepeth upon the earth after its kind. And God saw that it was good. Okay? Notice, all these things are created after their kind. That's very important. That's the law of reproduction. Like reproduces like. Okay? Dogs have puppies that grow up to be horses. And horses have eggs that grow up to be fish. What? Oh, okay. No. Like reproduces like. And allowing for adaptation, they never become another kind. They always remain what they are. So, verse 26, and God said, let us make man out of a chimpanzee, after the likeness of the gorilla, and let them, It doesn't say that. Okay. Well, what does it say? God said, let us, the triune God, make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and the fowl of the air and the cattle, and over all the earth and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So, God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. And in these verses, when it says man, it means mankind, the human race, okay? Maybe God was politically correct. Nowadays we're not supposed to acknowledge differences in gender, we don't have firemen anymore, we have fire persons. And, what are some other weird things that we do now? But God created the human race, male and female, for a purpose, okay? To have dominion over the earth. God created this earth, all these creatures. He needed someone to take care of it. And that's our job. Has been our job for over 6,000 years. Are we doing a good job of it? Not really, not very well. Why? Well, because in the fall, man became greedy and selfish and began to do things with the earth and the creatures that have not helped it. And now we have invented weapons and things that could just destroy this earth if God would allow it to happen. God will not allow mankind to destroy the earth. Why? God says He's going to destroy it. Okay? He's going to destroy it. So, man alone was created in the likeness of God. Therefore, mankind cannot have come from the beast. Now, if you watch these shows on evolution, and if you study this in your science textbooks, which you get to study, you will find all these proofs that man evolved from a lower species. You know, they've got skeletons of mankind in the various degrees of evolution, they think. Okay, you know, there's mentioned in our quarterly here, Piltdown Man was a hoax, which was really a gorilla that the skull, and I think that's all they found of this creature, is the skull was worked on to give it the appearance of age, to change its shape and so forth like this, to look like it evolved. How many have ever heard of Neanderthal man? Okay. How many have seen pictures of the Neanderthals? You have. You've seen drawings, and you know, if you've seen, you know, 10 million BC movies and stuff like that, you know, they got these hairy guys going around like this, and they just kind of grunt around, you know, and they got snout running out of their noses and stuff like that. Well, that's just people's imagination of these cavemen, okay? Where did they find Neanderthals? In Europe. Okay, they found you know, a significant number of skeletons. Do you know why the Neanderthals were hunched over like this? Because they were just real human beings that had arthritis. That's the fact. Just arthritis that caused them to be hunched over. And they lived in Europe, you know, cool climates and dampness and so forth like that, where they're going to have those kinds of things. And then, you know, we could go on to all the other finds. It's really interesting to me that they can find a bone buried in the jungle in Africa. Just one bone. And then they draw this picture of what Lucy looked like. All speculation, but they palm it off on us as it is fact. You know, according to the chronology in the Bible, planet Earth is probably no more than 10,000 years old. You know, there was a man that added up all the genealogies and came up with the dating of, you know, creation being 4004 BC. Again, that's an approximate number, but the genealogies leave allowance for more people. But in realistic, Christian scientists look at planet Earth and say Earth cannot be any more than 10 to 14,000 years old. But how many have heard, you know, that the Earth is millions of years old? Okay. And, you know, one proof is, okay, when did the dinosaurs live? Okay. They say, well, the dinosaurs lived 27 million years ago. How do you know that the dinosaurs lived 27 million years ago? Because their fossils are found in this certain strata, in the Earth's strata, okay? How do you know that that strata of the Earth is 27 million years old? Because dinosaurs are found in it. Now, I went to a Christian college, and we did study physical science. And I looked in my science book, and I found almost verbatim the same thing. I mean, they're like 6 pages apart, but that was the same proof. Now, the science book wasn't written by Christian scientists, but it's the book that we used. And my teacher did not teach evolution. But evolution depends on, number one, the ignorance of the population, the conditioning of young people such as Robert and brothers and sisters in school to believe that these things are facts, and the fact that we are not permitted to teach the Bible or creation as an alternate theory. What's wrong with teaching creation as an alternate theory to the theory of evolution? I see nothing wrong with that. You know, like I said, I went to a Christian college, and I was taught creationism, and this is what evolution says. I got to see both sides of the coin, and I'm glad for it. Did it cause me not to believe the Bible? Absolutely not. It helped me to believe the Bible even more, because I know the Bible's true. But when I see the teaching of evolution and just the wild statements that are made without any support, it just, just how in the world can people believe that kind of stuff? You know, it would be, is this maybe too simplistic? Much simpler thing to believe that God created than to believe that all this happened through an accident. So, creation versus the theory of evolution. You know, we've only looked at surface things. We haven't gone too deeply. I've kind of rambled and gotten out of the sequence of the quarterly, but hey, I had fun anyway. I hope you all had fun too. So we'll go on to our morning service.